Hello, students. Mrs. Strawn here, and I am really missing you guys and missing meeting regularly on Wednesdays. I hope you're all doing well and you're happy and healthy. I pray that you're able to sleep in, that you are keeping busy and maybe being helpful to your parents at this time. All of your teachers are kind of scrambling to learn all these new technologies that we can be using to still assist you during these times so that we don't have to extend the school year into the summer when a lot of people already have travel plans and such, and so that you can finish your school years and get your units that you need for your classes, and that we can respond to this international crisis in as graceful a manner as possible and as helpful manner as possible. So your old lady teacher here has been learning how to use iMovie and Zoom this week. And for my classes, what I will likely be doing is recording weekly a 30-minute 20 to 30 minute video lecture for you and posting that hopefully by Monday or Tuesday. And then if needed, we can do a Zoom together to ask and answer questions, to connect and whatnot. I'm still learning that technology, so be patient with me, but all of the information will be clearly updated on your Edmodo page by Wednesday morning, and definitely in time for your regular 10 a.m. business and life math session. So again, I will be posting the videos of the lecture, and then I will be outlining the rest of the activities and homework that you'll have for the week, and then we will see if we need to connect via Zoom or an online format. I think it could be fun, but I also think that this is a great experience for you guys to start learning some distance learning skills, because a lot of college and trade schools are really moving to that format. It's more efficient, it's more effective. You can attend any university in the world this way, and I know that it really helped my older son when he went off to college, because even though he was on college campus full time living in Arizona, some of his classes were still in the online format, and he watched some of his roommates and some of the new students struggle with that format. But because he had been engaged in the university's dual credit system for his whole senior year, he was able to transition more seamlessly and knew how to interact with all the interfaces and stuff. So not that we're going to be a university, but what I'm saying is getting used to this type of format, I think, will really benefit you guys in the long run. So Romans 8:28, that he works all things together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purposes, right? So not that this has a huge spiritual significance, but it can be part of the good that the Lord is providing for us during this time, amongst many other things. I do want to point out to you guys that this is the first time in modern history that dads have been told to work from home. So if you have a dad that isn't, that is still working because it's one of the approved businesses to continue running, then your dad's maybe working a little bit overtime, but a lot of dads are home. You're not running around crazy like normal, and so hopefully you're really enjoying this time as a family and you are getting a little bit of rest, which we don't always get. I encourage you to get outside every day, get some vitamin D, which I read is actually really good in helping to fight the coronavirus or COVID-19, and remember to keep up on your vitamin C and your sleep. So today we will be talking about taxes. Bom, bom, bom. Everyone's favorite subject. So Benjamin Franklin famously is quoted as saying there are only two things that you can count on in life, paraphrase, death and taxes. So since this is a finance class, we'll be talking about part of that, which is taxes. So a brief history on taxes. We all remember from our American history classes that part of why the American Revolution happened was because there was taxation without representation. So the founding fathers and the colonists did not like the taxes that the British government was imposing on them because they didn't have representative government. They didn't have delegates or representation from the colonies in the British Parliament helping to make those decisions. So, famously, we had the stamp tax and the tea tax and all of those things. Well, so obviously we won the Revolutionary War. We were able to start self-governing, and the founding fathers, the issue of taxes goes all the way back and is really woven into our nation's history. So the founding fathers, some of them were what we call Federalists, and some of them are what we call Democratic Republicans. So a few famous Federalists were John Jay, I believe John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and then the Democratic Republicans were James Madison and Thomas Jefferson. And something interesting happened. So our first president, obviously, was George Washington, and he originally really sided on the anti-tax side of things, which was the Democratic Republican side. So he agreed that we needed a small central government and no taxes, okay? But being a general for the army during the Revolutionary War, he really saw the effects of there not being a centralized, strong federal centralized government at that time. He watched his men freezing, starving, and walking through the cold eastern winter with no boots, okay? So from what I've read, it really changed his heart on that matter, and he started to see that there was some benefit and purpose in a central government. So the Federal Reserve and what's the name of it? Oh, the Department of the Treasury. The Department of the Treasury was founded, okay? And so initially, I don't know the percentage of taxes and how that all worked, but we started to realize as a nation that there needed to be something that was there to help provide for the needs of those things that are listed in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. So something's got to fund that. There are various kinds of taxes that today, obviously from that time in history to today, things have changed a ton, okay? And the federal income tax is something that was instituted during the Civil War to help pay for the costs of war. So there are different kinds of taxes, okay? There are income taxes, which are federal tax, state tax, and FICA, F-I-C-A, which we'll get into what that means in a few minutes. And then we have what are called wealth and consumption taxes. So hopefully you're taking notes. And again, another benefit of having a video is you can pause and replay me. And I know you're just going to want to watch this over and over again because this is so interesting, right? But our income taxes, so we work all year and then we generally file them on April 15th. If that falls on a weekend, they extend it. So a couple years ago, our taxes were due on April 17th. And then because of the pandemic that we're dealing with now, the federal government has extended the tax deadline to July 15th, but normally tax day is April 15th. So the fiscal year, which means the earning year for private citizens, is from January 1st to December 31st. So that's your year to have your income, and then you file your taxes for the previous year on April 15th. So from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, you then have to file your taxes on April 15th of 2020. If you happen to overpay in your tax burden, so every citizen has an amount of tax that they have to pay, the federal government. If you've overpaid in taxes, you will get what's called a tax refund. If you have underpaid in taxes, you owe the federal government more money, okay? And some people get into a lot of trouble by not paying in enough taxes and then owing a lot of back taxes, or they have a tax burden. When you get a job, you fill out what's called a W-4. And on Edmodo, I'm going to post a copy of a W-4. When you get hired and you fill out all your employment paperwork, you will fill out a W-4. So I want you to be familiar with what it looks like so that when you go to fill one of those out for the first time, if you don't have a job, you will know what information you need to bring with you and what documentation you might need to bring with you. Okay? And okay. Yes, I'm going to post that. So payroll taxes. Payroll taxes are the taxes that your employer takes out for you when they pay your check, okay? When they pay you your check. And they take out your federal income tax, your state income tax, and that FICA, F-I-C-A, okay? There are what we call standard deductions that you file. And so when you fill out that W-4, you're going to see that there are different questions that it asks you to try to figure out how to, as closely as possible, get you so that you are contributing your appropriate tax burden every week so that you don't owe at the end of the year. So for example, you are going to be asked how many dependents you have. So if you are single and not married, you have 0 dependents. If you are married, you're going to mark that you're married because married people have a different tax burden. And then if you have 2 children, you would say that you have 2 dependents, okay? And so the federal government and the state government automatically calculates then, and your employer calculates how much you would owe, and they take that out of your weekly, biweekly, or monthly paycheck, okay? Federal. So let's talk about the federal income tax. Okay, what do you think the federal government does with all that money? The federal government, it supports the functioning of the federal government. So the branches of the 3 branches of government, judicial, executive, and legislative, okay, pays them. And it pays all of their health benefits and all that kind of good stuff, right? And then it supports everything that the federal government spends money on, like defense. Okay, defense spending is military spending, keeping our borders safe, purchasing and developing weapons, and all the things that go into caring for the military, medical costs, clothing, housing, all that stuff. It also goes to support social programs, okay? So that's like social welfare programs. Also, it goes to support our veterans, right? So our retired military men and women, and things like housing and urban development. So the government subsidizes and helps to house people that are in the poverty line, under the poverty line, okay? The part of the federal government that manages all of this collection of money is called the IRS. That stands for Internal Revenue Service. They collect the tax, they process your tax filings, and they're in charge of tax law enforcement. Did you know that you can be a law enforcement agent for the IRS? In my lifetime, I've actually known quite a few. And so they actually go after people that are involved in tax evasion and breaking certain laws. It's very interesting. And the IRS was actually, sorry, I think I misspoke earlier. It was the IRS that was created during the Civil War to help collect those taxes, okay? So they needed a branch of the federal government to make sure that they're getting their appropriate money from us. All right, so I am going to, since we're talking about the federal income tax and the federal budget, I'm going to post for you an article about where the federal government spends its money. It's shocking and a little disturbing, okay? I'm also going to post for you a link to the forms that you need to file your taxes. Now, if we were able to do this in the classroom setting, we probably would have had you bring in your W-2s and 1099s, okay? So those are the 2 federal forms that you get for employment. A W-2 is what you get from a regular employer. A 1099 is if you are a contracted employer, which means that you just get paid what they owe you. They don't process your federal, state, and FICA tax for you. You have to do that on your own. There's a whole other tax called the self-employment tax. All of my current employers or jobs I'm a contract employee, so I get paid a set amount, and then I have to pay my own taxes at the end of the year. So I get 1099s. But if you have a job at like Stater Brothers or Taco Bell or wherever you get a job, you will get a W-2, and it'll tell you how much money they've taken out for each of those tax collecting entities. So I'm going to post a copy of a W-2 for you. And then a W-4 is a 1040 is what you file with the federal government, with the IRS, to file your tax return, for your tax return or your tax burden, okay? If you make under $69,000 a year, there are a multitude of tax processing businesses that will allow you to file your income taxes for free. So you can go on and you can e-file, which means electronically file your income taxes with the IRS. Back in my day, when we had to walk barefoot in the snow uphill both directions and there were still Tyrannosaurus Rexes roaming the earth, I had to go to the post office and get a newsprint booklet that had all of the forms and instructions in it. It's all online now. And when I had my little newsprint booklet, I would fill everything out and I would snail mail it to the IRS and get my tax return in the mail. Well, now if you e-file, you can do everything electronically. You can fill out the form electronically, you can read the directions electronically, and you can submit it to the IRS electronically, and you can get your refund if you're getting one. Most of you will. If you are a young person working, you'll get most of your federal taxes that you've paid back and most of your state taxes that you get paid back. I don't think you get your FICA taxes back, but you will get a tax return if you've made under, I believe it's $9,700 this year. So where is it going? Oh, free filings, okay? And so when you file, make sure that you have your bank account number. And remember when we went back, if we go back and think back to when we did our checking account unit, that routing and transit number, so those numbers that are the first set of numbers on the bottom of a paper check, or they're usually listed somewhere on your bank's website. If you have your routing, transit number, and your bank account number, you can usually get your check automatically deposited into your account, which is really nice, okay? All right, so that was federal taxes, okay? Federal taxes, IRS, income tax, pays for defense, veterans, social programs, housing and urban development, all that good stuff. And then we have state taxes, okay? So it's not just paying the federal government, you have to pay your state government too. And this varies from state to state. So it depends on where you live, how much you pay. Interesting thing, as I'm getting on in years, when my family or my husband and I kind of look into where we might think we want to retire, one of the things you look at is a place that has low state income tax, okay? So you work your whole life and you have to pay all these taxes, and then when you're done working your whole life, you want to pay as little out to the man as possible. It gets really tiring after a while. But it varies state by state, okay? And so the state uses income tax to support things like law enforcement, okay, fire, education, higher education, and health and human services. So every state has their own human services and welfare programs on top of the federal government's welfare programs. I will be posting for you a link to California's state budget, so you can see the breakdown of where we spend our state budget that we take in from state income taxes, okay? So I will post that for you. And then the state entity that collects state taxes is called the Franchise Tax Board, okay, the FTB. So I will be posting a link for you there on Edmodo as well for how to get to that website and how to file your taxes with them as well, okay? I believe it's also free. I'm not 100% sure about that one. Okay, back to FICA, because it's finally in my notes. FICA stands for Federal Insurance Contribution Act. FICA is what pays Social Security, Medicare, Social Security and Medicare. So Social Security was something that was enacted in I believe it was the 1920s and 30s with the New Deal legislation from FDR, it would have been in the 1940s. I'll need to look into that. But anyway, Social Security is a program where they collect money from your taxes, from your paycheck your whole life, and then you get a monthly check from the government to help support you when you're in your old age. So you can retire at 59 and a half, you can retire at 60, 65. If you work until you're 70, there's a whole structure for how that plays out, but that's something we'll talk about another time. And then Medicare is the federal government's mandated healthcare system. So it's mainly serves, again, retired people, but it also senior citizens and retired people. It also supports those who may need support because of things like disabilities. So you get in an accident and you're no longer able to support yourself, or you have a degenerative disease like muscular dystrophy or some sort of maybe like Down syndrome or something. It helps to support medical care for those people. All right, your FICA taxes. One of the reasons why it's nice to have like a 9-to-5 job, a corporate job or whatever, your employer pays half of your FICA tax burden while you pay the other 50%. Now, if you have a pay stub, or if your parents will let you see one of their pay stubs, I want you to look at how much you pay in those FICA fees, taxes, and double it. It's a huge tax burden, okay? Huge tax burden. So just keep that in mind. When you vote, since your guys are getting on in age, when you get to be 18 and you see things on the ballot for state, local, and federal governments, just remember that anything that costs money has to come from somewhere. And where does the state and federal government get their money? From you and from me, right? So just keep that in mind when you vote for things. I'm not saying not to vote for programs and things that support those less fortunate or whatnot, but just keep that in mind. All right, so back to taxes. So we talked about our federal income tax. We talked about our state income tax. We talked about FICA. Okay, and now we're going to talk about the wealth and consumption taxes, okay? A wealth tax is mainly, the biggest wealth tax that we pay is called property tax, okay? And property tax is something that you pay to the local government. It's usually your county. In California, you pay your county a percentage of the value of your house. So in California, we have something called Prop 13 that was voted in by voters. I'm not sure when, but it's always been in my lifetime, where they are only allowed to charge us 1% of our property values, okay? And those values are calculated a certain way. They also tax land if you own land, and commercial real estate. There's also some states that charge taxes on things like cars, boats, toys like wave runners and all those good things. But the biggest wealth tax is property tax. So because you own property, you have to pay tax on it. Another tax is called consumption tax, and that is on, there are two types of consumption tax, okay? There's sales tax and excise tax. Sales tax is collected by the state and local governments, and they tax everything you buy, right? So you get paid a certain, just think about this for a minute. You get paid a salary. The federal government takes some of it. Then they take more for FICA. Then the state takes their fund, their part, their tax. And then you're left with a sum of money. And then if you buy a house, you have to pay taxes on the money that the value of your house, right? And then you have to pay taxes on almost everything that you purchase. Almost everything. Some of the only things I can think of that we don't pay sales tax on is fresh food. If it's cooked food, you have to pay tax on it. But fresh food, you don't have to pay tax on. So just think about that too when you go grocery shopping. Paying less tax if you're buying whole foods. Okay, and then remember we talked about, especially I think with auto car loans, when we talked about auto purchasing, taxes, sales tax varies by city to city, state to state, county to county. So I guess it should be city to city, county to county, state to state. So State of California collects a certain percentage. Then the county can vote in another percentage, and then the city can vote in another percentage. So when you get to be 18 and you go to vote on things, you'll see how they plan to pay for certain programs they want to enact. And it might say sales tax increase of 0.25% through 2030 is how they're going to maybe give us new paving on the freeways or whatever the program is. So you're paying for it every time you spend any money. So the city of LA's sales tax is much higher than the city of Riverside. Our tax went down 0.25%, actually half of a percent a couple years ago, and then we voted it back up again. So now in Riverside City, we pay 8.75% in sales tax. All right, now excise taxes are taxed on certain things, and it's usually an excise tax. It's also known as a luxury tax, okay? And so these are taxes on things like gas. The state of California has the highest gas tax in the nation, and then also on things like alcohol, cigarettes, and air travel, okay? And so those are different things that we get charged tax on as well. So just to review real quick, we have federal income tax, state income tax, FICA, and then we have wealth tax, property tax, consumption tax. Within consumption tax, we have two categories: sales tax, the percentage you pay on money for anything you buy, and excise tax, aka luxury tax. All right, so that's that in a nutshell. I think I'm going to stop there. Next week, so you are going to have some homework assignments based on you'll have homework assignments based on investigating all the different forms that I'm going to upload and articles that I'm going to upload for you to look over, okay? So you're going to need to analyze some of those things and write a response, and I will be posting hopefully very clear directions on that. Now, I know we're not doing a Zoom as of right now, but if you have questions, comments, concerns, anything, please reach out to me. My cell phone number, I'll tell you now, is 714-585-3187. You are welcome to text me if you have questions during this time. I only ask that you include your parent on the text thread as well, okay? You can ask questions on Edmodo. You can message me on Edmodo, and you can email me, lisa@1010academy.com. lisa@1010academy.com, okay? Also, part of what we are going to be doing to learn how to do a virtual classroom and to learn how to assimilate maybe into that college online virtual structure is we will be doing discussion questions. So discussion questions, I will post a question on Edmodo, and you will each be required to post a response to my question and then a response to one other person's response, okay? So I may post a question: what's your favorite place to buy a burrito? You all know I like beans. So what's your favorite place to buy a burrito? And Luke may say Chipotle by far has the best burrito because they use no lard in their beans, and their chicken is not hormone-free and fresh and grilled with no sugar and seasonings. And then Riley may say, while Chipotle has good burritos, you might want to think about the fact that they do use preservatives in their tortillas, okay? But then Riley's also going to say, I think Del Taco has the best burritos. Actually, I think Luke probably would think Del Taco's burritos are the best. But Riley might say, I think Del Taco's burritos are the best because, and she's going to give a detailed response that shows that she's connecting to the question. Now, obviously, we're not going to be talking about burritos. Well, that's fun. And by the way, I just did eat a Miguel's Jr. burrito after grocery shopping because that was a lot of work and made me really hungry. But you will need to show that you're connecting to the question, that you've thought about it, that it's a genuine response. It's not like, yes, I agree. It needs to be in detail about something that's relevant to the topic that we're discussing. Okay, so this is kind of like an online format for an in-class discussion. Now, some of you introverts may really get used to this structure and really kind of like it, right? And some of you may struggle with it, but the ones that struggle with it, maybe you've had the benefit of being in the classroom all year and you've had it easy. Well, now you're getting trained in a different thing that's outside of your comfort zone. So next week, we will be talking about how you figure out how much tax you have to pay. Another overwhelming activity. And then we'll talk about write-offs, so tax write-offs, ways that you can lessen your tax burden. It's one of my favorite things. And then we will be talking about the 3 types of income that you can have as an employee. Then we will also be doing those task cards that we've done a couple times in class so far about budgeting and stuff. We'll be doing one that will be a paycheck analyzation task activity. So next week, look for probably a little bit shorter lecture time, and then that hands-on math, figuring out percentages and stuff for your paychecks. And then I will brainstorm some other fun things to do, okay? So hopefully you're well again. Love you guys. Let me pray with you guys before we head out. Lord, we're just thankful for your provisions during this time, Lord. I'm thankful for the community and how we can still come together. Lord, I'm thankful for the technology that you have helped to provide to us, Lord, so that we can keep in contact and keep 1010 Academy going, Lord. I just pray that you protect our community, that you keep everyone healthy and safe, Lord, and that you bring us back together as quickly as is safely possible, Lord. I pray that we will be restored by the beginning of May so that we can join in on the year-end activities and be together, Lord. We love you and we thank you. We thank you for this rest. In Jesus' name, amen.